evening. My name is Tony Jones, and you're tuned in to a special broadcast of the Coalition, where we discuss all sides of local, regional, and national news, politics, and current events online at coalitionradio.us. With me in studio is the P.O. taxpayer. P.O., good evening.
Good evening. It's been a quality evening so far.
Great to be here for our special broadcast. We will be talking mostly national politics this evening, as opposed to our usual mix of local and national, but there's a lot going on. There's a lot to talk about this evening.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's interesting that all of a sudden, it just seemed like a few weeks ago that Mitt Romney was gracing the airwaves.
Oh, God.
And looking forward to, and I don't know if he had that congratulations, President Romney moment, and then he didn't. And then all of a sudden, things quieted down. And then a few weeks later, we're back at it, which is great. We're thrilled that we're able to, in this studio, bring together a mix of candidates from all disciplines, all backgrounds, to focus on, let's just say, their inner wonk.
All walks of life?
All walks of life, all beliefs. What's our mantra here at the Coalition? Number one, we are an outrage porn-free zone. We engage in no conversations about Christmas trees, about prayer monuments, prayer banners, none of that. We want none of that here. The second, and particularly with regards to tonight, we do not handicap elections. When we talk to candidates, we want to understand their core philosophies, their beliefs, where they've come from, where they want to go. We want to understand not if they'll be elected, we want to understand why they should be elected.
The true open door policy. And speaking of open doors, who just walked through our open door but Christine. Chris, good evening.
Hello, Tony.
Why did you just drop on the ground?
An assortment of snacks.
Show canceled. That's not something you say in a room with two fat guys.
Well, again, folks, it's a challenge midweek here to break through the walls to get to downtown La Prave, to the bunker here up in the 5th floor, to the undisclosed location where we host our weekly show.
And now they can narrow it down to buildings with at least 5 floors.
That's true.
And in Providence, occupied buildings with 5 floors are actually pretty rare.
5 floors and the lights are on.
Right, so if you're stalking us this evening, just drive around in the dark.
And speaking of, if you are stalking us this evening, you can, after the live show, of course, meet us down at Sidebar Bistro if you're catching the live program. If you're catching a podcast or a rebroadcast, you have lost out on the fun, but we will be heading down to Sidebar immediately after this broadcast, 127 Dorrance Street. Come down, meet and greet us and our guest. Feel free to buy me an adult beverage, perhaps.
Copious quantities of alcohol.
Feel free to buy me a children's beverage.
Well, but Tony, why don't you introduce our guest?
We do have, very excited, making his way all the way up here from South Carolina. In 2016, or now, he'll be running for President of the United States. Robby Wells. Mr. Wells, good evening.
Tony, it's great to be here. I tell you, it's a lot colder in Providence than it is down in Charlotte, North Carolina.
So chances are there may be some people listening that are hearing the name Robby Wells for the first time. So I guess a good place to start is an introduction, letting everybody know who is Robby Wells.
Well, Robby Wells is running for President of the United States in 2016 as a new breed Democrat. I believe that we need to return the liberties and the freedom back to the people of the United States. I believe that people are sick and tired of being sick and tired here in this country of these career politicians that go to Washington just pointing the finger, casting the blame at each other when things go wrong and try to pat their own selves on the back when things go right. I believe it's time for we the people to rise up. I am one of the we the people. Just like millions of Americans, I am a middle-class guy that wakes up every morning wondering how I am going to provide for my family, just like anybody else, feeling like my American dream has been stolen from me and replaced with an economic nightmare because of the economy that we are facing today. So I do have a great plan. It's called the Game Plan. For those that are out there listening, they can go on the website, which is www.robbywells2016.com, and that's Robby with a Y, R-O-B-B-Y, W-E-L-L-S 2016.com.
Getting right down to it, the single biggest challenge facing this country right now, many would argue, is people walking away from the Founding Fathers' documents, the Constitution. couple of things that are featured in the discussion of why many believe we are in a constitutional crisis. Number one, we've got the elevation of the czars here in not the Soviet Union, but here in the United States, where extra-legal individuals are appointed to reign over vast, unregulated, uncharted, uncontrolled areas of government. Secondly, we've got a president who openly disdains the rule of law, where he announces in really uncharted territories the ability to ignore entire sections of the United States legal code. Tell us about your feelings about the Constitution. Do you consider yourself a strict constructionist? What are you of the living, breathing mode? Where do you go with the Constitution?
Well, P.O., first of all, you asked me, what do I label myself? Mm-hmm. I label myself as an American. You see, I think that the establishment has done everything in their power to put labels on us, to divide us. You see, this is not black America. It is not white America. It's not Latino America or Asian America. This is the United States of America. Mm-hmm. Because we all pledge allegiance to that same flag, and we all have the same Federal Reserve notes that says, "In God we trust." So I do follow the Constitution. In 2012, as a realist, I wanted to get my name out there. I did run in 2012 as an independent. Mm-hmm. I did that as an independent because I knew that I needed the practice to debate, to get that practice in for 2016. You see, most of my background was coaching college football, so I understand the value of practice. So in 2012, I did run as an independent to get my name out there. I was in 10 third-party debates, sought the nomination of the Constitution Party, and I would consider myself a pretty constitutional guy. In fact, there's two things that I can promise the American people when I go to Washington. Number one, the decisions I'm going to make are constitutional, and number two, it'll be for the betterment of the people of the United States. If I ask those questions and either one of them comes up false, then we're not going to do whatever it is that we're looking at that time.
So bring us into the decision to seek the Democratic nomination as opposed to running independent again. And we've had this discussion ad nauseum on this show. Is there a chance for a third party? Is there a chance for an independent movement? Or do you think people should hold their nose and party with the D's and R's, as it were?
Well, Tony, that's a valid question, and I appreciate you asking that. Again, you're talking to a candidate that ran as an independent in 2012. I did announce that I am running as a Democrat back in September, and the reason I did that is because I am a realist, and at the same time, I'm probably one of the fiercest competitors you're going to come across because of that coaching background and all the years in college athletics, of course. But being a realist, you've got to have either the R or the D by your name in order to be able to actually have a chance to win the White House.
Right.
I chose to go with the Democratic Party because I truly believe that they reach out to more people. I've always been a bridge builder, bridging that gap. I was the very first white head football coach at Savannah State University, which is a historically black college, and was the most successful guy they've had there in the past couple of decades. But I tell you that because I've got all sorts of things that I've done in my background. I own my own business now in Charlotte, North Carolina, and we've got probably about 9 employees. So I understand what small business owners go through, feeling like they're being choked out by the federal government right now. So understand this. I'm one of you guys, and I just want to go to Washington and have the chance to fight. I've taken a stand. Now I'm asking everybody, just like the slogan of my campaign says, I'm asking everybody to rise up with me.
On the local level, the advice that has been portrayed on this show, and we have the option of, is that on the local level you can probably get about 5 or 6 of your friends together and quote-unquote take over any Republican or Democratic small group. It's kind of a little bit of a convenience we have here in this state.
Yeah, being a tiny state, yeah.
Well, you're right, though. We are a country of labels. So, and the label Democratic means so many different things to so many different people.
Right.
I grew up in New Jersey in the traditional a family that was a traditional Kennedy Democratic family. We were Irish American. We had a kind of a mixed love and contempt for the Kennedys, but at the same time, Jack was seen as someone who was socially somewhat liberal, but at the same time fiscally conservative. Flash forward now, I live in New England, where Rhode Island is the bluest of purple blue states, where we swing, despite all evidence and sense to the contrary, we swing further and further left to the point where government seems to be really more a function of propping up employee labor unions and state government than it is of anything for the people. So somewhere in the middle, and then take over to the green side of the party, where you have a lot of principled people espousing views. Where do you fall in that whole mix?
Well, Pio, let me just say this: you hear left wing, you hear right wing. Mm-hmm. Have you ever watched a bird try to fly with one wing? It just doesn't happen. He's going to flap around on the ground, and all he's going to do is kick up dust, and he's not going to get anything accomplished.
That's Rhode Island.
Well, if people will go on and they'll check out our website at RobbyWells2016.com, they're going to see Eaglenomics. Eaglenomics is my economic plan to bring this country back to prominence, and it takes the absolute best from the left wing and the absolute best from the right wing. It's none of this compromise right in the middle. Let's take the robust part. I think that's where Congress has been messing up in Washington. They try to compromise, and you get some legislation that comes out that really doesn't amount to anything.
Compromise is the goal, not performance.
Right.
So tell us, let's expound then on Eaglenomics. Give us a flavor for that. I know you cover a lot of very specific areas on the website, everything from energy independence to job creation. Just feel free to develop on that. Give us a sense.
Well, the big thing, and I know that people up in the Northeast are going to appreciate this, because everywhere I've been around the country, they appreciate what I'm going to say. Eaglenomics will bring back the manufacturing jobs. We're going to block a large percentage of the imports coming into this country, drive down the cost of manufacturing here in the United States, give tax breaks to those companies so they will actually come back to the United States. The ones that want to stay overseas, we're going to take away those tax breaks. Mm-hmm. That's what's going to bring those jobs back. You see, since 1993, all the manufacturing jobs have gone away from America because of the North American Free Trade Agreement. Mm-hmm. NAFTA, CAFTA, and AFTA have been detrimental to our economy. So we've got to have a president that's going to go and actually push to repeal those, and that's what I intend to do.
So in terms of economics and economics, in your first, again, people tend to put labels and they tend to put boundaries, and they want to look at achievable goals. In that first magic 100 days that everyone talks of in the presidency, is the repeal of NAFTA one of your priorities?
Yes, that is one of my top priorities, actually.
What's your sense of the legislative support for that? I mean,
Well, let me just say this. If I am elected president of the United States, and it can be an overwhelming majority in the electoral votes that I actually win, I believe that sends a mandate to Washington of what we need to do.
Okay, so repeal of NAFTA, tax incentives. What type of tax incentives are you pondering?
Well, what I would like to see is let's give the breaks to these companies that are already overseas so we can actually bring them back. Give tax breaks to them. Let's don't give tax breaks to these companies that actually stay overseas. Right. That just hurts us.
Yeah, that reinforces the wrong behavior.
Yeah, it does. It reinforces bad behavior, and I'm all about positive reinforcement. Mm-hmm. As a former educator, I was an educator for 20 years, and I want to get into that too. I've got some other things on the education side, and as far as protecting our children. In fact, I'm up here in the Northeast about that as well. I want to talk about that. But we've got to take care of us. If we don't take care of our own backyard, we're not going to have a backyard.
Right. When you talk of manufacturing jobs, and I was thinking about this on the ride up here, in that it took me. I live fairly close. It took me a while to get up here, and as I like to mention every once in a while, the roads here are like the surface of the moon. When you talk about manufacturing, bringing some of the trade jobs back, does infrastructure repair play into that at all?
Well, it really does, and let me tell you how. Right now, we're giving away billions of dollars a year in foreign aid. In fact, we're giving over $50 billion a year in foreign aid right now. Now, in the big scheme of things, you may say, well, that's not very much money when you're $17 trillion in debt. But imagine this. Imagine if we were taking care of our own backyard with a president that said, hey, We're going to stop with the foreign aid. We're going to take that taxpayer dollar instead of sending it overseas. Let's take care of these 50 states. Imagine if each state had an extra $1 billion a year, not just a one-time fix, but a year that they could use for their infrastructure. What all could be done with this state right here in Rhode Island? What could be done as far as creating new jobs?
And that also brings up energy independence. If every state could use, if you fixed all your roads with your $1 billion and you had some left over, what could states do for energy independence, or what else would states be able to use that money for?
Well, there's all sorts of things that could be used with that money. But now, as you just touched on something, Christine, with energy independence, that is part of my game plan, and that's what I call my platform. It's the game plan.
That's fitting for you.
Yeah, thanks. we do need to be energy independent. Right now, we are getting 25% of our oil every year from the Middle East. And if you think about it, over the past 2 decades, what has it gotten us? It's gotten us Desert Storm, 9/11, Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya 2 summers ago, almost Syria. And don't you find it odd that we had enough money that we were going to go bomb Syria, and then 2 weeks later we didn't have enough money, so we had to shut the government down? Okay, that's what I call, from the South, that's what we call talking out of both sides of your mouth.
Oh, right.
Okay?
Well, we somehow always seem to have enough money to throw bombs at people.
Well, you're exactly right.
Or to invade other countries.
But back to energy independence. 25% of our oil is coming from the Middle East. My plan as president is within my first 3.5 years, which is my first term, to become at least 25% oil independent, so that we no longer have to do bad business with these countries over in the Middle East that support terrorists or harbor terrorists in their own backyard. That's going to get us out of all these crazy conflicts, and we've got to do that for us too, because it's going to create another 3.5 to 4 million jobs, and experts will tell you that right here in America, just by becoming energy independent. And I'm not just talking about oil. I'm talking about we're going to do whatever it is that we've got to do to become independent. This is the United States of America. We're the greatest country on the face of this planet. A lot of people have forgotten that. I believe it's time for us to all stand up, rise up, and start acting like it.
In terms of specifics of energy independence, I mean, the 3 big hot button issues, if you will. Number 1, Keystone Pipeline. Number 2, fracking. Number 3, coal. What's your take on all 3 of those?
Well, let's go ahead and open up the Keystone Pipeline. Fracking. I'm all for fracking.
Okay.
The experts have told me, and my energy crew that I've got a group of advisors in the energy field that I talk with weekly about all of this, and in my humble opinion, and I know that there's plenty of opinions out there, everybody's got one, but in my humble opinion, I believe that we're on to something good with fracking. I believe that we can take this natural gas and do something very similar to what Los Angeles has done with their bus system. All their buses now run on natural gas.
Right.
And I'd like to see that in all the municipalities.
What about coal?
Once again, I believe that we can use coal, and we can do it in a clean way. We've got the technology. Let's use the technology. Let's do it.
Why do you think this president, and I know you're not going to run against this president, but you're going to run against a pattern of thought that allowed this president to exist. Why do you think this president has shut down, while on one hand espousing green energy, at the same time shut down current development of, I'll call it legacy energy? Why do you think that's happened?
Well, again, I can't get into someone else's mind and say why they're doing this or why they're doing that. And once again, and you did touch on it, President Obama is not my competitor.
Right.
Okay? My competitor most likely is going to be a lady that ran in 2008. And in 2008, I said that whoever beat Hillary Clinton in the primaries would end up being the president of the United States of America, and Barack Obama beat her in the primaries. Here we are coming up on 2016, and I'm going to say the same thing to you, P.O. If she decides she's going to run, whoever beats her in the primaries will be the president of the United States. That's why I want to face her in the primaries.
So you just to go off, deviated to the political for just a second.
Sure.
You're that dismissive of the Republican Party's chances?
I am.
Well,
That's okay.
let me just get real simple with you. Okay, I'm an old football coach, and here's what I'll tell you. Whenever we would go on the road and we'd play against an opponent, the only chance we ever had for victory is if our team was a cohesive unit that worked together. Right now, the Republican Party has basically three factions, and there's too many egos right there, and nobody wants to give up their set of power. So you're going to end up having basically three parties within the Republican Party, and because of that, no.
Yeah, we have that
They
now.
can't win right now.
They're having public fistfights at this point.
That's exactly correct. And, for the Republicans that are out there listening to this, I'm just going to tell you this right now. I'm going to run, and I intend on winning the Democratic Party nomination, and then after that, if you like this platform, and I'm sure there's going to be at least a third of the Republicans that will, we intend on getting those votes too, and we intend on winning the White House in 2016.
Okay. So getting back to energy then. So
Sure.
Keystone, yes. Fracking, yes. Clean coal, yes.
Yes.
You may have just gotten West Virginia.
Well, that's good. I've got friends in West Virginia.
Okay, fair enough. Then cycle back then to Eaglenomics. The next key component, of course, was tax credits. Can you give us some specific examples? I'm a big believer in investment tax credits. I come from a tax accounting background.
Right.
To me, investment tax credits are the only solution because it promotes hard investment. People actually have to physically buy equipment, which then,
For their business, whatever the business is.
then generates additional jobs in the creation of said equipment, and then all the glory that is American capitalism takes place as the money is spun around like a gigantic economic blender.
P.O., I'm right there.
image.
I am right there with you on that. Yes, we should have tax credits for these investments like you're talking about. That's what's going to actually help spur on this economy and jumpstart this economy from that section of it. At the same time, bringing those jobs back by overturning NAFTA and CAFTA and AFTA now, that's going to help this economy. Becoming energy independent is going to do the same. And I'll tell you something else. We've got to get the Federal Department of Education just out of the way. Because right now we've got over 500,000 manufacturing jobs that are just vacant right here in the United States. But the Federal Department of Education has said you can't teach anybody in high school these positions anymore because it's considered dangerous to teach shop. I believe that we've got to get the federal department out of the way, give it back to the states like the Constitution says. If it's not covered in the Constitution, let's follow the 10th Amendment.
That's radical. I mean, now you sound like one of us. I mean, that's a radical thought for for someone running the Democratic Party. I mean, you're sitting in the epicenter of a state that is essentially run by teachers' unions. And when I say that, I'm not just being, throwing that out there. Literally, employees of the National Education Association of Rhode Island occupy some of the highest policy positions in the state while simultaneously working for the teachers union. It's magic.
Yeah.
So how, on a political level, when teachers unions hear that, they lose their minds. I mean, do you also believe in school choice? I mean, how does...
P.O., let me just say this. If you keep on doing what you're doing, you're going to keep on getting what you're getting. Okay,
That's true.
I was an educator for 20 years now. Here's what I'll tell you. 1977. That was the year that the Federal Department of Education was formed.
Right.
Before 1977, we were in the top 5 in the world in education, in most every field. But now, if you watch CNN just 2 weeks ago, what are we in math? 41st? Is that correct?
Somewhere behind Cuba, I think.
And overall, I think we're like 22nd.
Right.
But needless to say, we've got all these other countries that are ahead of us, and a lot of them we're giving foreign aid to. That makes absolutely no sense to me. So let's go back and let's look at what actually has dumbed down the people in this country or these students and where we went wrong, which, in my humble opinion, once again, was with the Federal Department of Education being formed. I would like to see our education system thrive, but I think that the best way to do that is to give it back to the states. Because here's the thing. What's good right here in Rhode Island for a student that's in high school and his curriculum may not be the same for someone that's in Hawaii or someone that's in Arkansas. if that makes any sense.
Oh, absolutely. You know, I think you find agreement here. I work with people in the trades all day long.
Right.
In today's America, one of the few groups of people that still shows economic gain are people who own businesses in the trades, people who employ other tradesmen. That's some of the most solid income, probably one of the more well-rounded lifestyles that exists, that's left here in what's left of free market America. The idea that the schools have, and you're absolutely right, have just run away from vocational education in a country which is simultaneously about to see the explosion of an academic financial bubble never before seen in this country that could technically dwarf some of the housing bubbles and stock bubbles we've seen, is astonishing because it defies logic. People need to be taught. They need to be given the opportunity to find their love, to follow their joy, but that joy can not be just a mediocre state college education. It could also be a wonderful career in the trades where they can literally flower. And yet we walk away from that all the time. We would rather see people occupied in terms of jobs, in terms of these terrible mid-level retail management jobs, which have little or no future, as opposed to filling a grotesque level of demand in anything from HVAC to construction management to tool and die to all the careers that actually made this country great. If we were ever to enter a global war again, we literally have no tool and die capacity left in this country, which to everyone, when I hear the collective yawn out in my audience, means you simply can't make things anymore.
Come on, Theo, don't forget about the flourishing art history careers out there.
Well, let me just say this. Let me get back to education for a second. One thing I will say, and this is why I'm up here in the Northeast this weekend. This marks the 1-year anniversary on Saturday, and I hate to use the word anniversary, but the 1-year anniversary of the tragic shooting that occurred at Sandy Hook Elementary School. And as a former educator, let me just tell you, I remember exactly what I was doing when I was alerted to what was going on that day. I was marketing with my business in Charlotte, and my old high school teacher, Kathleen Rutland, she taught me history, called me up and she said, "Are you watching the news?" And I said, "No." She says, "You need to turn it on." So I got to a TV and I did, and it literally broke my heart. So what I did, P.O., is I took a few days and I stepped back and I took a pause because everybody across this country was heartbroken. I wanted to see if there was anything I could come up with that I think could help the situation because, P.O., we've got a lot of gun violence, and we're seeing it in the schools too. My plan is called Vets for Kids. We can protect every child in every school across this country. How? By taking our unemployed veterans who have laid it on the line for you and for me, showing the greatest love that any man could show by laying his life down for his friends.
Correct.
Taking these unemployed veterans and putting them back to work in these schools as guardians for these children. What we're basically going to do across this country is we're going to employ about 500,000 veterans. Number two, we're going to protect these children. We're going to tell these psychopaths, because realistically they're out there. There's a few out there. We're going to tell these psychopaths that these schools are going to be off limits to you. And here's the thing. We can do this kindergarten all the way through college. So now you don't have to worry about seeing another tragedy like Sandy Hook. You don't have to worry about seeing another tragedy like you saw at Virginia Tech. How easy would it be to work in college? Well, you've got all these guys that are coming back from serving their country that go to college. They could actually have a work-study program while they're doing it.
Right.
Yeah. And, the thing about it is people are saying, well, you got resource officers in these big cities. Yeah, but here's the problem. Small-town USA, they don't think it's going to happen to them. Because I guarantee you, Newtown, Connecticut, just over a year ago, they were just going through thinking everything was fine. And then all of a sudden, the unthinkable occurred. So I do know this, in every small-town USA, pretty much there is a veteran or two. And we could put them through a strict screening and training process and actually make a better America.
On a side note, do you believe that veterans should be given top priority for positions like TSA and civilian employment and DOD?
I think that veterans that have laid it on the line for us should be taken care of for the rest of their lives.
Fair enough.
So we are about halfway through the program, which means we need to take a quick break. We do have some questions coming in online in this wonderful new media world that we all exist in. So we'll get to a few questions. And in the meantime, you can go to coalitionradio.us. On Facebook, facebook.com/The Coalition Radio, and on Twitter @Coalition_Radio. We'll have more with Mr. Wells after the break.
Folds is your definitive source for cannabis culture, with a print magazine, radio show, live events, and so much more. Check them out online at 13folds.com. That's the number 13, FOLDS.com.
My name is Angel Rach. I'm a mother of 2 teenage children, and I fought all the way to the Supreme Court for the right to use the medicine that saved my life. I've been permanently disabled for 10 years, with an inoperable brain tumor, wasting syndrome, and several other serious conditions. For 4 years, I was in a wheelchair, in so much pain, I couldn't even hug my kids. The hardest part was looking in their eyes and seeing how much they were suffering because of my medical condition. The medicine that gave me my life back and gave my kids their mom back was cannabis, also known as medical marijuana. With medical marijuana, I can walk, maintain my weight, and I can be a mom. Without it, my doctors believe that I would die. To learn more about medical marijuana, contact Marijuana Policy Project at 1-877-JOIN-MPP or on the web at mpp.org.
Hey everybody, it's Tony Jones. You know, when I'm not here yakking about politics, I spin records. That's right, if you like good old-fashioned rock and roll radio the way God intended it to be, then tune in to The Tony Jones Show. The information's online at tonyjones.org. That's tonyjones.org.
Heading out on the town tonight? Be sure to log on to providencenightout.com and don't forget to check their cell phone app. That's providencenightout.com.
Tony Jones here. You are tuned in to the Coalition online at coalitionradio.us. James Ugal checking in all the way from California, who is a part of the U.S. Parliament movement and I believe has filed to be one of your competitors. Thank you for tuning in all the way in California. We do have some questions coming in online. I'm here with P.O. Taxpayer. I'm here with Christine. Thank you, guys. Good evening.
Good evening.
Robby Wells is our guest. He is running for president in 2016 as a Democrat. Let me scroll down here. Live, cutting edge, new media.
Bleeding edge, Tony. Bleeding edge.
New media. Kevin checks in. He's from your hometown, P.O. There's a little hint for your P.O. trivia freaks out there. He's from your hometown. He wants to know, what would you do about corporations that are basically buying politicians and then getting tax breaks afterwards? In his opinion, the middle class is getting hammered.
Well, Kevin, you're exactly right. And, my plan, the reason the middle class is getting hammered is because these elected officials feel like they've got to pay back all these favors because they've, basically sold out everything to these corporations. All you've got to do is look at the FEC report in 2012 at who actually gave money to Barack Obama and Mitt Romney, and you'll see that these big corporations gave to both of them because they wanted to be able to support a winner.
Cover the bases.
Tip O'Neill claimed, I should say, that he looked at the donor list, but he didn't look at the amount as to avoid that very situation. I don't know how true that is, but it sounds great.
Yeah, it sounds good, but I don't think it's very realistic. What I will say is this. We've got a true grassroots plan to take the White House. Here's what I need. I need 1/3 of 1% of this population that will rise up with me every Friday and donate to this campaign. It could be just $1. 1/3 of 1% of this population would be 1 million people. Okay?
2 million people just bought the new Xbox One.
Right.
And they paid a lot more than
They paid
$1 a week for
a
it.
lot of money on that.
So if we had 1 million people every week that donated from $1 to $5, let's say it was $5. Okay? Over the course of 2 years, that'd be $500 million, and we could go take the White House, of course. Realistically, we're going to have to raise the money, and I understand that. We've got to play the rules, and by the rules that are there, we've got to play the game in order to win. So we are going to do that. We've got to win.
So, P.O., this past weekend when we were out and about, you and I hitting the town partying, we ran into...
Like rock stars, I might say.
We ran into Herb Anthony, also known as Erp Snurple, a good friend of the show. He wants to know if you favor cutting socio-economic programs that many people depend on, and if you do you think that that is unconscionable?
Well, let me just say this. The situation we are in right now, we're paying for a lot of things that, of course, the Constitution doesn't say that we should be paying for. But we did not get here overnight. This is not going to be a quick fix to fix all of this. In other words, let's make it real simple. If a patient goes to a doctor and they've got a huge tumor on their back, and they say, "Doc, can you please remove this tumor?" And the doc says, "Sure, I'll do it. I'll do it right now." Well, if he goes up and he just whacks that tumor off, that person's probably going to bleed to death. What that doctor has to do is surgically remove that tumor, and he has to go in, and as he comes to blood vessels, he has to tie them off, and he has to meticulously and surgically remove that tumor. Basically, that's what we've got to do. If we're going to get a smaller government, we've got to do it in a meticulous manner, or we're going to bleed to death.
On the state level here, the amount of fraud in some of the social programs is just unfathomable. And that's not me sitting in an ivory tower, because as a man of the people, I know people who partake in this personally, as far as the selling of food stamps or using that money to buy cigarettes or booze or tattoos or marijuana or whatever it may be. There's a huge fraud problem, unfortunately.
Well, we've created a dependency lifestyle in this country. And unfortunately, what gets thrown into that too often, and I like your idea of a surgical strike, if you will, what gets thrown in is people of goodwill who find themselves in difficult positions, who need some sort of safety net. That's, as a people, we are the most generous people in the world. So I think it's all a question of balance, but I think you point out some good ideas that are, I mean, it's so simple with focus and energy to create jobs that lift people away from that, so as simultaneously you have less transfer payments and more taxes being paid. That's the ideal that somehow seems to be lost in Washington right now.
Well, with a better economy and with more jobs and people going back to work, you're going to have less crime. That's true.
Absolutely.
It's a better America, and that's what we've got to push for. We've got to push for a better America. You know, I don't know of any other candidate that's got a platform quite like mine that goes on both sides and takes the best of both. But, you know, I do believe that this is probably the direction that we need to go. Now, that's going to be up to the good Lord and to the American people. You know, but hopefully, good Lord willing, you know, things will work out.
Before the break, we started to touch on the military.
Yes.
And we talked about specifically I'd say a coming crisis in the reentry of a significant part of our country who's given all to, whether it be in Iraq, Afghanistan, wherever, they in Korea, in the Middle East. We've got a crisis on our hands because these people are coming back now at an alarming rate and are facing staggering unemployment.
Yes.
and little opportunity. What's going forward? What's your role, or what do you see as the role of the American military?
Well, P.O., all you got to do is really go back to the Constitution. Article 1, Section 8 says that in peacetime, we can have a military presence around the globe with our United States Navy. What I would like to do, because what we have right now is a modern-day empire. I study history. History repeats itself. And if you look at empires over the course of the world history, they always fall. So we've got to reel these boots-on-the-ground troops in and get them back here to America. I want to keep our Army strong, train them here in America, but we can have a military presence with our Navy and have them in the hot spots of the globe, wherever that may be. Now, if you think about what our Navy has, we've got the personnel, we've got the fleet, but we've also got amphibious capabilities with our Navy SEALs and with our Marines, but we've also got naval aviators. So you've got the air support as well. In fact, the United States Air Force is the largest air force in the entire world. Do you know who number 2 is?
United States Navy, right?
The United States Navy. That's exactly right.
You set us up for that, though. That was nice.
But in terms of our role, let's take, you brought it up earlier, a recent moment in time. Mm-hmm. How would you have handled Syria? Even before it became, quote unquote, Syria.
Right. Well, I do not believe that we had any business being in Syria. Okay. We never should have even had a threat of going to Syria. We've got to stop intervening in all these nations. That's why everybody over in the Middle East and around the world has such hard feelings about the United States right now, is because we're inflicting our will on other people. Mm-hmm. It's time for us to take care of ourselves, and it's time for us to reel everything back in here to the United States. I'm not trying to say that I want to be an isolationist, because I do not, but I do want to follow what President George Washington said in his farewell address, where, in layman's terms, basically he warned of foreign entanglements. Right. He said, be nice and friendly with all, and trade with those that are friendly with you, but entangle with none.
No, and so no to Libya. I'm assuming that also means no to Iraq, no to Benghazi, no to all of them. I mean, do you see any? I should probably say this. Where in the Middle East do you see us with strategic interests?
Well, listen, if we were energy independent, we would not even need to be over there anyway. Mm-hmm. That's why my plan to become energy independent is not just about economics. It's a matter of national defense.
How do you characterize former Senator Kerry's, now Secretary of State Kerry's resolution, if you will, of the Iranian situation?
Well, once again, Iran doesn't like us very much, but we've got 40 military bases that surround the country of Iran right now. If Iran had 40 military bases that surrounded the United States, we probably would not like them very much either.
This is true.
Do you allow countries like Iran to continue to create bombs? I mean, do you allow them, and this gets really to the heart of your issue, because define allow. Do we even have the right, the moral standing to quote-unquote allow? But how do you handle their nuclear development? And how do you deal with that in terms of a real politic, a real-world issue?
Well, it's real tricky. Here's what I will say. We're not going to go out and pick a fight with anybody, but if they throw the first punch, we will end that fight. That's what I was taught as a child. I was not taught to start a fight, but if someone started one with me, I was going to go end it. Now, what constitutes a first punch? A direct threat is a first punch, in my humble opinion. Okay? If a country, a sovereign nation, is making a direct threat at the United States, we've got a problem.
So, does your presidency at some point in time, either through I'll call it the extension of the American military, the Israelis, or directly do some level of preemptive strike against Iranian nuclear assets?
Well, once again, if Iran, if they are threatening the United States, that's different than if they are threatening any other nation. Israel, okay, and Netanyahu has already said this. They can take care of themselves militarily. So what I would like to see is where Israel could actually do that. Now, one thing about it, and I understand that if Israel decides to do anything to defend themselves in the Middle East, then all of a sudden they've got the entire Arab nation against them. So that's where it gets really, really tricky. Israel is our friend, and they're going to be our friend and our ally. We do need to protect Israel, but at the same time, I think there's a fine balance there.
Earlier, you made some hints in terms of the openness of our government. What needs to happen regarding the events surrounding Benghazi?
Well, not just Benghazi, But if you think about all the scandals that we've had, you've had the Fast and the Furious, the AP scandal, the IRS, the NSA, all the initials.
Alphabet soup.
Alphabet soup. You've got Benghazi. I mean, the list goes on and on. Here's what I will say. If you've got a truly transparent government, there is no need for a cover-up. And if there is no need for a cover-up, there is no scandal. What this country needs is a president that is going to go with the right attitude and sit behind that desk in the Oval Office. An attitude of being transparent. Because, you see, attitude doesn't start at the bottom PO and work its way up. Attitude starts at the very top of any organization, whether it's a business, a team, government, whatever, and it permeates its way down. So if you've got the correct attitude in that executive branch with your president, that's going to carry over to the legislative, to the judicial, even down to the state and local levels as well. But we do need to be transparent, and that's what the American people are going to get from me. And here's the thing. I'll go ahead and be transparent right now. I'm going to tell everybody I'm not a perfect guy. Okay, a lot of these candidates want to get out here and think they've got answers for everything. They want to act like they don't have any skeletons in their closet. Hey, I'm just like everybody else out there. I've had financial struggles just like everybody. I'm a middle-class American that's gone through the same stuff. I've been divorced. Okay, I've had relationships that have failed, just like millions of people out there. I've had great jobs, and then I've lost a great job and had absolutely nothing, wondering how I was going to make it and how I was going to be able to provide for my family. I've been on the mountaintop experiences. I've been on teams that have won championships and gone undefeated. I've been on teams that couldn't buy a win. Mm-hmm. So, I'm just telling you, I've been there and I've done all of that. But I'm not going to sit here and paint a rosy picture that my life has just been, a ray of sunshine every day, like a lot of these candidates try to do. I'm going to tell you this right now. I'm just being real. I am a real guy.
One issue that's very real to Americans, of course, is the white elephant in the room, and that is, of course, Obamacare. Now, I guess, what was it? 2 months ago at this point, it was Obamacare. The last 3 weeks or so, it's the Affordable Care Act. Depending on who you talk to, they either want full attribution to President Obama or not. You would take office January 20th, 2017. Do I have that right?
January 20th, 2017. That's correct.
You walk in, all right. We assume that we've got a working website. Congratulations, folks. In the year 2013, we know now how to build a website. Outstanding. But at the same token, you've got millions of Americans who can no longer afford health insurance. There are some that would argue that was the plan all along, to essentially bankrupt the American healthcare system and force people into a single-payer situation. Let's assume tomorrow you are elected and you are taking office tomorrow. What would you do with healthcare right now?
Well, first of all, I want to see everybody have healthcare. I do. The reason I want to see everybody have healthcare is because if a catastrophe happens, let's say you had a bad car accident, let's say that you, God forbid, you got cancer or whatever. If you didn't have health care, it could wipe you out and your family out. You could be bankrupt. So I do like the idea of everybody having it. I believe that Obamacare needs to be tweaked. And here's what I mean by having it tweaked. I don't want to see the Affordable Care Act being a job killer. Okay? Which is basically what you've got right now. You've got a lot of these corporations that are having to cut people back to part-time employees, or they're having to lay off a lot of people, whatever the case may be. But I think it needs to be tweaked right there. And here's the thing again that I'll tell you. This is the United States, and we need some serious people that are going to step forward. And that's why I am stepping forward. But you bring up some really, really strong points there about bankrupting the healthcare system, and as if things do not change, that's probably what's going to happen.
So, should the president delay the remaining mandates at this point?
Well, whether he delays them or whether they go through right now, if they don't tweak it, you're still going to get the same result. It's either going to be today or it's going to be a year from now. It's going to be the same thing. They've got to fix what's broken with it. The thing that I didn't like was when they said, well, we'll go ahead and vote on it and pass it, and then we're going to read it after we That makes absolutely no sense to
scary.
me. That's very scary.
The employer mandates, though, seem to be creating a situation. I think the intended result was to have everybody just sign right on, join in the parade as it marched down Main Street, have everybody just pile on right behind it.
Sure.
As a libertarian, it's always been my assumption that while everyone wanted health care, most of the people, or a significant portion of the people right now who do not have it by choice because they simply do not want to pay for it. All right. Do you, at a certain point, continue to raise healthcare costs to try and find a way to shovel these people into the system? I mean, it seems like the only program that's successful right now in terms of sign-up is Medicare. How much more can Medicare take before that bankrupts itself?
Well, and once again, that's why my plan to bring these manufacturing jobs, it's all a big circle. Bringing the manufacturing jobs back, which is millions of jobs, okay, at least 5.5 million of them. Becoming energy independent, which is another at least 3.5 million jobs, makes us once again a production-based nation. Because right now all we are is a consumption-based nation. All we do is buy and consume, and if that's all you're going to do, you're going to go broke, you're going to go in debt. We're $17 trillion in debt. How are we going to get out of that? Because we're in debt like this, now Social Security's on shaky ground. Medicare, Medicaid, the whole thing, it could fall apart. The only way to actually get everything moving back in the right direction is to get Americans back to work. And, there may be some people out there that want to just rely on the federal government and get a little check, okay? And that's the government's way of actually controlling a large portion of the people. What I will say is this. You can give a man a fish, and he'll eat for a day. But if you teach him how to fish, he'll eat for a lifetime. We've got to train these people, and we've got to put them back to work.
Fair enough. We go into the last part of the show. We like to talk about the lightning round. We just toss some quick questions. The Democratic Party a year from now, as we begin to enter the initial stages of the primary.
Yes.
We talk about the Republican Party being chaos. That's something we take great joy here. But the Democratic Party, you do have that tension between, and it's exhibiting itself right now as we speak, in this quote-unquote grand compromise that's taking place, that's accomplishing nothing. In fact, all it seems to be accomplishing is that we're going to lock into 2 years of nothing.
2 years of nothing. That's
2 years of nothing. What direction does the Democratic Party, much as made of the Republican Party, where they have to go, what has to happen to the Democratic Party so as a party organization it gets back to its roots and supports the American people?
Needs new blood. And that's where I come in. That's where other people like myself, like an R.J. Harris that's running for governor out in Oklahoma as a Democrat, okay, that ran for president in 2012 as a libertarian. I don't know if you remember R.J.
Oh,
yeah. But I think that's what you've got to do. We've got to get new blood in the Democratic Party. You've got to get some new ideas. If you keep on doing that same thing, you become stale. Mm-hmm. So here we are. We're just speaking for the people. This isn't really about being black. It's not about being white. It's not about being Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, Constitutionalist, Green Party, or Independent. This isn't about being Christian or a Catholic or a Mormon or an agnostic, a Muslim or an atheist. This is about being an American. And it's all coming together with a common purpose of actually getting this country moving back in the right direction.
So I hate to be that guy, but I got to be that guy and ask you how you feel about the war on drugs.
Well, once again, let's talk about what the actual definition of war is. War, in my opinion, is when you go into conflict against a sovereign nation. I do not believe there's actually a true war on drugs, per se. Now, I don't smoke marijuana, but those that want to smoke marijuana, I think they should be able to do what they want. What I would like to see with marijuana is basically the same, treat it the same that you treat alcohol. Mm-hmm. If you're under 21, you can probably get in trouble if you use it, or if you're going on a playground, you're selling it to kids, you're going to get in trouble for that.
Right.
But besides that, let's just leave people alone when it comes to it.
Pull people over for driving under the influence if they are.
Right.
Which is happening anyway.
That's right.
So
Does the Robby Wells Justice Department do anything to the people who participated in the 2008 financial meltdown and the abomination that was the real estate mortgage market? It's been ignored now, and it probably, the way it's going, it will have been ignored for 8 years by the time you become president.
Yeah, and it probably will. And then you get into the statute of limitations and the whole 9 yards. What I will tell you is this. I've got my agenda, which is, I truly believe, is going to get this country moving back in the right direction. And I've got to stick with that. You know, they say pick your battles. Mm-hmm. I've got some major battles that I want to go fight for these people across this country. And here's what I'm going to tell you. If you'll just indulge me for a minute, there was a young girl, a beautiful young girl, went away to school on a scholarship, a music scholarship. And quickly, everybody in this school, they realized how talented she was. But just like most girls, she ended up falling in love with an older man. He happened to be a married guy. And one thing led to another. She's pregnant. Unwanted pregnancy. Her friends were telling her, hey, look, it's just a blip on the radar. Go ahead and terminate this pregnancy. To the point where they set her up an appointment, went to pick her up, and at the last moment she said, no, I'm going to go ahead and have this child, put this child up for adoption, and give this child a chance. Now, I've never met that lady. But if I ever get a chance to meet her, I'll thank her because that's my birth mom.
Wow.
Here's what I'm telling you. Yeah, I was adopted when I was 6 weeks old. What I'm telling you is this. I want to be America's adopted son. You never turn your back on family, even if they turn their back on you. I'm not going to turn my back on the people of this country. You see, I truly believe that the United States even has a place for me, an old bald-headed football coach with a great plan for this country that's going to go and fight. And I will fight to the bitter end for the people of this country. So I'm just asking for that opportunity.
So this is a tough one to lay on you with 2 minutes left in the broadcast, but you do identify as being pro-life. Do you think Roe versus Wade should be repealed, or is that just the law of the land?
Well, once again, I follow the Constitution, and I believe that according to the Constitution, it's a state's issue, such as marriage is a state's issue as well. Really, the President of the United States doesn't have much of a dog in either one of those fights when it comes to states' issues. What he has to do is he has to uphold and support the governors of each state that uphold those laws in each state. Of course, everybody kind of knows where I stand, but everybody's got to make that choice. You know, it just so happens that my birth mom made the choice of life.
And real quick, as we wrap things up, let everybody know one more time how they get a hold of you and learn more about the campaign.
Yeah, if everybody will go online to www.robbywells2016.com, you can check us out right there. You can check out Eaglenomics. You can check out the platform, which is called The Game Plan. There's actually a documentary on there which covers my entire life story, and it's got a lot of my campaign team on there. It's got one of my former players that played in the NFL, played for the New York Giants. As a matter of fact, yeah, Anthony Wright. He was actually the first starting quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys after Troy Aikman retired. So, yeah, he played around in the league with about 4 different teams. So, I'm real proud of him. He's in there, but the star of that documentary has to be my mother, my adopted mother, which is basically my mom. I mean, that's all I've ever known.
He is Robby Wells. He is running for president as a Democrat in 2016. Thank you again, Mr. Wells. Don't forget that if you are listening to our live broadcast, we are heading down to the sidebar, 127 Doran Street. P.O., great job, thank you.
Thank you, Tony.
Christine, as always, great job, thank you.
Likewise, Tony.
CoalitionRadio.us on Facebook, Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio, and of course, on the almighty Twitter, Coalition_Radio.